Bogosity podcast for the 22nd of September 2014, the podcast that waves like it just doesn't care. This is your host, Shane Killian, and joining me again this week is Jakob Morris. Jakob, welcome back to the show.
Glad to be back.
So the big news that I kind of had to rush to get together because we didn't know what the result was until yesterday morning as of the time we're recording this, but the Scottish voted on whether or not to be independent from Great Britain and the UK.
And what were the results?
Well, they're still a part of the UK. The no one. But the interesting thing is that 45% voted yes, and I think that's a lot higher than anyone would have predicted way back when this campaign started.
Well, honestly, I know how different it would be whether they were independent or not.
Yeah, and that's something that's been the subject of a lot of debate, and interestingly enough, libertarians have been kind of split on this one. Because, of course, generally, we like independence, we like government being smaller and more local, whenever possible, but there have been a lot of people pointing out that basically the reason why a lot of them wanted independence was so they could make things more socialist.
Yeah, that's what Scotty M would say.
Yeah, he had a couple of really good videos on that. And it may have been the case that Scottish independence might have meant more freedom for the rest of Britain, because then the Conservatives would have been able to get more of their budget under control, things like that, without all this opposition. So it seems like Scotland might be a lot more socialist and England a lot more conservative.
Which is strange, considering where Adam Smith came from.
Yeah, and lots of great freedom fighters have been from Scotland, but,
Freedom!
But the problem is, if we became independent from England, we wouldn't be able to complain about them. Complaining about the English is a traditional Scottish pastime. And basically all the predictions about this, resorting in, mass looting and riots and everything just, didn't happen. It was just a vote and that was it. Scotland's share prices did rise, and that's something else that people were speculating, that if Scotland went independent, their share prices and their government's credit rating might go down.
Yeah, I think I got the gist of that.
Yeah. And a lot of this does sound, it ends up being like a, so what, because everything is just what it was. But again, 45%, that's a lot closer than I think anyone was expecting. And I think it might pave the way on down the line for Scotland to try this again and maybe actually win their independence.
Yeah, when they're ready. They don't have the sort of Damocles hanging over them, socialist and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, it's probably good to have more of a mix of it in government so you don't get one party completely taking over. Because it's not like the Conservatives are all about, hey, let's have government out of people's lives. I mean, they got their own ways they want to. Kind of like the Republicans over here.
Yeah.
It's probably better when they can't get anything done.
Yep. Doing nothing's better than doing something.
At least when it comes to government. Well, let's move elsewhere in the world and talk about Poland, because something is interesting. There's been a petition that's gotten 250,000 signatures to call for sex education teachers in Poland to face jail because it damages the morality of children.
Oh, no. We can't teach them about sex.
Yeah.
Even though it's fun.
But apparently they want anyone teaching sex education in Poland to face up to 2 years in prison, calling it an anti-pedophile measure.
I'm sorry, how old are these kids?
Well, I mean, they're school age, middle school age, teenage kids, but what they're saying is that sex education in school can promote sexual behavior in minors and undermine their morality. And of course, we know it's the exact opposite. In places where you have proper sex education, there's less teenage sex, fewer teenage pregnancies, fewer teenage STDs, fewer teenage abortions,
Helpful.
So they're calling sex education promotion of pedophile behavior, punishable with 2 years in prison. And you see, this is one of those things. If they really thought that they were pushing pedophilia, would they be satisfied with just 2 years in prison?
I hope not.
I think actual pedophiles would get more than that. Well, Monica Kent-Pronouncka, president of Nobody's Children, an organization fighting child abuse, said, "It is hard to believe that in the 21st century they want to punish teachers educators, and carers who want to inform children about their development and the nature of sexual relationships and put them in the same boat as pedophiles.
Nope, we gotta keep them in the dark.
So the people who are actually dedicated to fighting child abuse say that's ridiculous.
Funny how that works out.
Now, 250,000 signatures is a lot, but it hasn't succeeded yet, and it has a long way to go, so hopefully this thing will end up dying just where it is.
Yep.
History is written by the winners, and so apparently is economics. That's why there's LibertyClassroom.com. Probably the best single learning resource for history and economics on the web, LibertyClassroom.com teaches U.S. history, Western Civ, and economics from actual university professors. There's lots of free material to get you started, including introductory lectures on all these subjects, and when you sign up, you get the full site's content for just $99 a year, less than the price of 2 cups of coffee a month. And if you type in the promo code Bogosity in all caps, you'll get your first year for just $88. Lectures are available in both video and audio format, so you can watch or listen to them on your computer, your phone or tablet, or in your car. Learn at your own pace about the subjects you're interested in and become a more effective debater. You'll also get access to lots of supplemental materials and even the professors themselves via the discussion forum and even live video chats. Inform yourself against the myths and propaganda of our society. Visit LibertyClassroom.com. Bogosity.tv and all of its services are hosted at GoDaddy. I've been very satisfied with GoDaddy's services and their wonderful 24/7 customer support for over 10 years now. So I'm happy to be able to give you this special offer. Just sign up for any new domain, web hosting, email, or other service and get 35% off with the code WOWNOBOGON. That's WOWNOBOGON. Because there's nothing bogus about these savings on quality internet hosting. Just go to GoDaddy.com and use the code WOWNOBOGON. Now this one I found a bit unbelievable. I mean, I guess in retrospect I should have expected it from the big anti-piracy, yay copyright people. But apparently all of these big media companies and big copyright holders want to ban VPNs.
And what are VPNs?
Well, a VPN is a virtual private network, and basically it's an encrypted tunnel between your computer and a server. And what they were originally for was like if you wanted to telecommute, you wanted to work from home, then instead of dialing in over a modem to your place of work and logging in that way, you could go in over the internet. But the problem is you need to access files and databases and things like that that they don't want out there. You know, lots of financial records and things like that. It's a big security breach to have all that out there. So what you do is you set up a VPN, and what the VPN does is, to your computer, it looks like you're on that network. But the packets you sent in all network communications are divided down into packets. So you get a packet sent down that network, the VPN encrypts it, and basically turns it into a blob of pseudo-random noise. And then it puts that into another packet that goes across the internet to the VPN server. The VPN server takes the blob of pseudo-random noise, decrypts it, and puts it on that network. So you're able to use that network as though you were connected directly without exposing it to the internet. Well, what people have started doing, and this is actually a big thing now that open Wi-Fi networks are becoming more and more common, there are VPN services, and the one I like to use is BoxPN. And you pay for a year, it ends up being something like $3 a month or something like that. Very reasonable. Lots of servers around with very fast connectivity. So the idea is you connect to their server, and then you have the encrypted tunnel set up with their server, and then that goes out to just the internet at large, and you can access the internet that way. Okay, what's the point? Well, like I said, if you're on an open wireless network, you're at a coffee shop, you're in a hotel or something like that, you don't know who else is connected to that network, right? I mean, it could be anyone snooping on you trying to reach your emails or grab your passwords or whatever. So by setting up this encrypted tunnel, you can make your transmissions private and stop people from prying. And also a lot of people are worried about their ISPs, and we've talked about VPNs before in the context of Netflix and companies like Verizon and Comcast. which have services that compete with Netflix. So someone tries to connect to Netflix and it's really crappy quality. It's like 240p, which is half of standard definition. And all they do is connect to a VPN server. And then that's encrypted. It's hidden from their ISP. And then once they're able to do that, then they can get it in full high def and the full speed and everything. Well, one of the things that people are doing is they're doing this to get around geolocation and other geographical restrictions. So if you're in a country that heavily censors the internet, but you can get out of that country to a VPN server, then through that VPN server, you can go to any website that your country's banned because you're not going through it that way. But that also means that, and this example is in Australia, there are Australians who are apparently watching Netflix, which doesn't yet have service in Australia. They purchase Netflix from the US and then use a VPN to go to a server in the US and watch Netflix that way. And then you have other things like people connecting to a VPN server in England and using it to watch iPlayer without paying a license to the BBC and things like that. So they're using this as ways to get around geographical restrictions and other restrictions on copyrights, and that's what they're complaining about. So they said in Australia, something like 200,000 people are using the US version of Netflix and getting through a VPN to get there. And ordinarily, Netflix would use your geolocation, and what they do is they look at the IP address and they say, oh, that IP address is in Australia. You can't use our service from Australia, so we'll cut you off. But if you take a VPN to pick a random city, San Francisco, so you're in Melbourne, say, and you're connecting to a VPN in San Francisco and sending it to Netflix, the IP address that Netflix sees is the IP address from San Francisco, not the IP address from Melbourne. And it says, oh, okay, you're in the US. Here you go.
Oh, poor Australians. When will they get their own Netflix?
They're working on it, actually, and that's probably what's going to end up solving this problem. But it hasn't stopped all these big copyright people complaining, because like I said, you can get VPNs pretty cheap nowadays. You can even set up your own. Like if you're going to be traveling somewhere in the country, you can get free VPN software, put server software on your computer and just leave it up and running. And then when you go elsewhere, you connect to it that way from wherever you are. So like if you're in the US, but you're going on vacation in Australia, then you could still watch movies on Netflix through your Netflix subscription by doing that. The legality of that is kind of questionable, but I don't think anyone would really consider that harm. The problem is they don't like the fact that Australians who never go to America are paying for a Netflix subscription and doing it that way. So there's a company called AHEDA, which represents 20th Century Fox, Warner Brothers, and a whole bunch of others. And they're actively lobbying for a ban on VPNs worldwide.
Isn't the government to get what you want? Never heard of it.
Well, and not only would that mean that, okay, they can't use a VPN to access Netflix, but that also means you can't use a VPN when you're in that coffee shop or that hotel room and protect yourself from prying eyes. And that's been the big thing that's driven all these VPNs, is just all these people are out on the, hey, wait a minute, this is an open Wi-Fi, I don't know who's there. And so they go out to do that. And I do that all the time with BoxPN. And it works on my laptop. It works on my Android phone. And every time I'm out, at a hotel or at an open wireless or whatever, I just pop right onto that VPN and just hide what I'm doing from everyone. And that should be everybody's right.
Yeah, it's not like we should think about the unintended consequences of laws.
Well, and it wouldn't work anyway, because how are they going to do that? When you connect through a VPN to Netflix, Netflix can't tell you're going through a VPN. The only way they'd be able to do it is if they had this list of IP addresses and said, oh, these IP addresses are known VPN, so we're going to block those. But then all they have to do is change the IP address on the VPN. I mean, it's not going to work.
It's never stopped them before.
Yeah. But apparently Hulu's already started to do this, which is another way that Hulu sucks. I'm sorry, but it does. But every time they find an IP address that's associated with a VPN, they put it in their block list. And I mean, all that means is that even if you're just traveling somewhere else in the United States and it's absolutely completely legal to watch Hulu Plus and you're at the hotel room and you want to watch Hulu, okay, you can just connect normally there and watch Hulu, but what if you're doing other stuff at the time? What if you've got your email client up and other things like that? And again, you don't know who else is in that hotel connected to that same Wi-Fi, so you'd actually have to disconnect your VPN connection, make yourself vulnerable to all that just to watch Hulu.
Yeah, bad form.
Yeah.
Bad form indeed.
Yeah, so boo Hulu, but I guess the good news is if they manage to get this ban going through, it won't work, it'll probably won't even work as well as when they keep trying to ban the Pirate Bay and it keeps coming back, because there are just too many VPNs, too many servers, and they can change the IP address so easily, so even if cooler heads don't prevail, the internet will. Hackers, terrorists, the NSA. But I repeat myself. Your online security is under attack, and the weakest point is your password. That's why you need LastPass. LastPass plugs into your browser and allows you to randomly generate strong, unique passwords anywhere on the web, all protected by one master password. LastPass sets up in minutes and gives you secure automatic logins throughout the web, synchronizing across all your browsers and all your computers, at home, at work, or on the road. It even securely stores sensitive form data, including credit card numbers, backup sensitive documents, membership info, Wi-Fi logins, and more. And with LastPass Premium, you can get these benefits on other applications and even mobile devices, and also get priority customer support. Sign up at password.bogosity.tv for a free month of LastPass Premium. Log in securely everywhere using the last password you'll ever have to remember. Go to password.bogosity.tv and get LastPass now. Well, and more big news this week. More war hawking from President Obama. I'm trying to make that a thing. I was actually calling him that back in the campaign in 2008. Well, no, he's a man of peace. He's against war. Yeah, right. So yeah, he's beating the war drums now against ISIS or ISIL or whatever you want to call them. But, I mean, it's just the same old, same old. It's just basically he grabbed George Bush's rhetoric, dusted off. There wasn't really that much dust on it because he's been using it all this time anyway. But yeah, ISIL is a terrorist organization. Quote, it has no vision other than the slaughter of all who stand in its way. Well, it might have the vision to do that. Whether or not it has the ability to do that is something that's very much in question.
Yeah, that's never stopped the lawmakers before.
And he says, quote, these terrorists are unique in their brutality. They execute captured prisoners, they kill children, enslave, rape, force women into marriage, they threatened a religious minority with genocide, and they took the lives of 2 American journalists. Now, he said unique. As horrible and barbaric as all of that is, how is that any different from all the other terrorist actions we've seen over there in the last 10 or 15 years?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, if Daniel were here, he'd probably quote Inigo Montoya, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
You know, it would be unique if they used flying robots.
Yeah, flying killer robots.
But that would be ridiculous, wouldn't it be?
Well, then Obama would have to go to war with them because they'd be the competition.
Oh, yeah.
But no, this is just baseless fear-mongering to get us into war, much like Bush did. Well, not much like, pretty much exactly like Bush did. He said, quote, Iraq possesses ballistic missiles with a likely range of hundreds of miles, far enough to strike Saudi Arabia, Israel, Turkey, blah, blah, blah. So after all the whole disarming thing that he's done and mission accomplished, and we pulled the troops out even though we left a whole bunch there, now all of a sudden they've got more of these weapons that we need to go and take care of. And he also said, quote, we've also discovered through intelligence that Iraq has a growing fleet of manned and unmanned aerial vehicles that could be used to disperse chemical or biological weapons across broad areas. We're concerned that Iraq is exploring ways of using these UAVs for missions targeting the United States. because somehow they run on magical fairy dust and can make it all the way across an ocean or something like that.
So yeah, not quite the competition yet.
No.
Still got to spread freedom somehow.
Yep, all those free corpses. He also said, quote, "If left unchecked, these terrorists could pose a growing threat beyond that region, including to the United States. While we have not yet detected specific plotting against our homeland, ISIL leaders have threatened America and our allies."
Oh no.
The fact is, they don't pose that much of a threat beyond that region. They don't even pose much of a threat in that region. I mean, it's still highly tribalized through there. They have lots of enemies all around them. They really have trouble getting people outside of their tiny little sect on their side because of all their extremism and all their terrorism, which actually most Muslims, believe it or not, do not agree with. And the best estimates say that they have fewer troops overall in the world than Obama left in Iraq after he got the troops out of Iraq. So it's really hard to see what the big threat is.
No reason to stop now.
Yeah, I mean, this is just the latest boogeyman. You know, it was Saddam Hussein, then it was Al-Qaeda, and now it's ISIL or ISIS or whatever. And just pulling out the George W. Bush playbook, he said, quote, "I have the authority to address the threat from ISIL." Even though all through his 2008 campaign, he kept saying how the president should not be allowed to take unilateral action, and that's something he would reverse. And everyone just unthinkingly went yay and voted for him.
Well, it's never stopped a politician before. Lying, that is.
I think there's even a lesson for Republicans in there, because back when George W. Bush was doing all that, and we were like, but don't you see, the president having the powers is a horrible thing. And they kept saying, yeah, but he's a great man. He's a righteous man of God, and he's going to take us into this. And it's like, even if I were to agree with all that, what about the next guy? What's the next guy going to do? And we're seeing right now what the next guy is doing, getting us into a war.
He's doubling it.
Oh, yeah. Getting us into a war that we have nothing to do with, against people who are no threat to us whatsoever, acting unilaterally without any approval from Congress. I mean, this really could have been written by Dick Cheney. It's hard to imagine Dick Cheney doing any worse than this if he had been elected president in 2008.
Well, he's doing it twice as much, so we should be twice as free now.
Yeah. But it's like, learn, people, if you're a Republican who like Bush, this is what happens when you give it to someone you like. And if you like Obama, and you think somehow Obama is justified in doing this, what happens if Dick Cheney or someone else like that does get elected next time? If you give a good politician the power to do good things, you automatically give a bad politician the power to do bad things. And really, these guys are just nobodies. They're at best bit players over there. The only thing a war with ISIS is...
They're posers.
Yeah. The only thing a war with ISIS is going to accomplish is ISIS's PR goals. Because then people over there would be taking them seriously. Oh, they pose enough of a threat for America to come after them. And I mean, it just reminds me of Iran again. Back when the U.S. deposed the Shah and put their Shah in power, they deposed the Prime Minister. And before that, there was this cleric named Ruhollah Khomeini, who was just this kind of nobody in this extremist sect that nobody took seriously, who said all sorts of horrible things about, how they should subjugate women and things like that. Whereas up to that point, they were really becoming a westernized industrial nation. After that happened, the US and the UK did that basically to get Iran's oil. That was when people started taking Khomeini seriously, because he was speaking out against that, and they were going, yeah, we're against the US, we're against the UK for all these things they've done. And then all this extremist stuff kind of came along for the ride, and then we ended up with the Islamic State of Iran. I mean, that's a worst case scenario, getting enough legitimacy for ISIS so that they do take over the region. They don't have a chance of taking over the region if we leave them alone, but if we act against them like this, it can backfire, people. And it's time we learn from history. Bogosity.tv is a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates Program, an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for sites to earn advertising fees by advertising and linking to Amazon.com. Just clear your cookies and go to Amazon.bogosity.tv, or check the right-hand side of the podcast page for Amazon's best deals, including the deal of the day and limited-time lightning deals on all sorts of great products. So next time you buy online, go to Amazon.bogosity.tv. Alright, Bogon Shields up. It's time for this week's biggest Bogon Emitter. And this week it goes to Yelp and an appeals court. And apparently what's been happening is Yelp is one of those websites where people can go and post reviews of whatever. It could be a product, it could be a company, it could be a brick and mortar store or a local restaurant or whatever. And if you like it, you can post reviews. And if you don't like it, you can post negative reviews. Except, apparently, they've been kind of manipulating their reviews based on whether or not the business advertised with Yelp.
Is this corruption? Conspiracy?
Yeah, something like that, except I don't think anyone's sleeping with anyone else, but it's advertising dollars, so it's not much different.
Yeah, we don't know about that. Sleeping part.
One business owner, Laszlo Goche, said that 25 good reviews have been suppressed that he has gotten, leaving the only 2 bad ones that determined his rating. Lisa Goodman, owner of a landscaping company, said that she and other business owners in the area were victims of this. And, it's like, you don't advertise with us, we'll take down a lot of your good ratings, leave all the bad. You advertise with us, we'll leave up your good ratings and take away the bad.
That's right. Either with us or you're against us. The we and the not we.
Yep. Well, and where the courts come in a case against Yelp, the court didn't determine whether or not they were actually doing it, but they said if they did do it, it's perfectly okay, because it's just hard bargaining.
Hard bargaining.
Hard bargaining. To deliberately manipulate the reviews based on whether or not they advertise.
And that's good?
According to this court, they said, quote, Yelp's manipulation of user reviews, assuming it occurred, was not wrongful use of economic fear. As Yelp has the right to charge for legitimate advertising services, the threat of economic harm that Yelp leveraged is, at most, hard bargaining. And this is in a response to a suit that a lot of these business owners brought up, and they ended up tossing out the suit.
Wow.
And so Goche had said, quote, the way I see it, the judge gave them the right to do anything they wish, no rules, no nothing. I am absolutely stunned how any judge can rule this way. And Goodman had said, quote, if that company is presenting themselves as being an honest review board that is not filtering out reviews, then that is a lie.
Like fraud.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because they're making it out like these are, the unbiased reviews from the people who come to their site, and they're not, because they're manipulating them. They're taking out ones that they think will encourage people to advertise with them.
Like Kotaku.
And author Peter Shankman tweeted, quote, court rules essentially that it's impossible to trust Yelp, and hopefully if there's enough attention about this story, that's what'll happen. People will just stop going to Yelp, and Yelp will realize, hey, we're not getting as many visits as we are now. I wonder why. Well, guess what? If we don't trust your reviews, we're not going to come read them.
Hopefully YelpGate won't last as long as Gamergate has.
YelpGate. I should put that on as a hashtag just to see what happens.
Do it.
Well, of course, Yelp's denying that they're doing this, and they say, no, everything's on the up and up. And they said, quote, if advertisers could control their reviews, then you'd expect them to all have perfect 5-star ratings on Yelp. Spoiler alert, they don't. Yeah, because they'd never be clever enough to leave like 1 or 2 5 stars or 1 or 2 1-stars or whichever way they want to go and just delete the rest,
YelpGate.
So that makes Yelp and the Federal Appeals Court this week's biggest Bogon Emitter.
Hashtag YelpGate.
You say you don't like Bitcoin? Why not? Oh, because it's not gold. No problem. Just go to coins.bogosity.tv and you'll be taken to Coinable, where you can buy gold or silver coins or bars with your Bitcoins, with literally up-to-the-minute spot pricing. Now there's no reason not to jump on the Bitcoin bandwagon. Whether you're a Bitcoin miner, service operator, Bitcoin business owner, or market speculator, you can get gold and silver from reputable dealers, and Coinable has Bitcoin liquidity for fast processing of your order. Coinable even utilizes a special shipping infrastructure to ensure that your investment arrives safely at your door. And you know what? By going to coins.bogosity.tv, you won't pay a Satoshi more for your purchase. But you'll help this podcast. You can even sell your gold and silver for Bitcoin as well. Coinable is your Bitcoin to gold marketplace. So go to coins.bogosity.tv and start turning your Bitcoins into gold now. And now it's time to divest the holdings of this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. And this week it goes to Joe Weisenthal of Business Insider, who's gloating about the final humiliation of the Fed haters. The Fed being the Federal Reserve.
Implying that they're Fed lovers?
Well, apparently he's one of them, because he's going on about how great the Fed is and how the dollar is one of the strongest currencies in the world. And of course he says, as measured against other major currencies. And he's trying to use this to discredit the idea that people are pointing out that, the more the Fed manipulates the dollar and keeps interest rates low and creates all this money, you just devalue the dollar. And he says, well, no, they're not. Look what it's doing against other major currencies. Well, all that means is that those other countries are manipulating their currencies and doing an even worse job than the U.S. is. I mean, it's a relative thing.
Cherry-picking data? Never heard of it.
Well, it's just an invalid comparison because we're not screwing it up as badly as they are. That's what he's saying. And he's trying to show this graph from Fred that's what he says is a rally in the dollar. And you can see it at the link, but basically to describe it, you got all the ups and downs, and it starts at 2012. It goes up and down. It kind of keeps hovering between 72 and 74, which is an index. 1973 is 100, and then it kind of shoots up above 75, then back down to 72, and then early in 2013 it shoots up to 76, and basically goes up between 76 and 79. At one point it goes down to 75, and then back up to about 78. And this rally he's talking about is where it goes from 76 up to 79, which is in that same range. So, not much of a rally. It's just kind of going around in the range it's been doing for the last couple of years.
Yeah, cherry picking.
But what's interesting is that he also has a blue line on the graph that's short-term interest rates, and he says that the reason for the rally is the rise in short-term interest rates. Well, and isn't what we've been saying all along has to happen is that interest rates have to start getting back up so that people are willing to invest again? So I don't really get how he thinks he's refuting us here.
Is he going somewhere with this?
I don't know. Well, and it's not a lengthy article, but he says, quote, when U.S. interest rates rise, especially when they're rising to rates in other countries, I have no idea what that means. I guess he means rising in comparison to rates in other countries. Holding the dollar becomes more compelling because basically you're getting paid to carry them. That's not really what it means. It doesn't mean you're taking dollars and stuffing them in your mattress. It means you're taking the dollars and investing them, which is what we need. And investment is still the only component of GDP that hasn't reached its pre-crisis levels. So when the interest rates go up, you're going to get a better return on that investment, which means you're more likely to say, okay, I'm going to invest. I'm going to put my money in an interest-bearing account in the bank, or I'm going to invest in a company or whatever. And then they'll have those investment dollars to expand their businesses, hire new people, things like that. That's what we need to get this going. This is what we want to happen. We want interest rates to go up. So, I mean, he's totally confused, I think, is just what he is.
Yeah, I'll say.
But no, it's all down to the Fed, according to him. And he says, quote, U.S. policy hasn't been perfect, but we're seeing how smart the U.S. was to ease aggressively early and hard. It could have been harder. So, yeah, you know how I gave you that homeopathic remedy and you didn't get any better? Well, think of how much worse you'd be if you hadn't taken that homeopathic remedy.
Well, when you put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's just woo. But maybe it is a good sign, because if interest rates are finally starting to rise now, then maybe we will get a recovery, unless Janet Yellen goes, oh no, we need to push him down to the floor again.
I'm crossing my fingers.
Either way, it still makes Joe Weisenthal this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. Well, that wraps up this Albatross edition of the Bogosity podcast. Please visit the forums at bogosity.tv, where you can read the show notes and join the discussion on these and other subjects. This podcast is free but not free to produce, so please donate via PayPal or Bitcoin at the top of the Bogosity.tv website or down the right-hand side of the podcast page, and give generously to keep this podcast going. And if you'd like to contribute to the podcast, just send a question, statement, news article, or rant to podcast@bogosity.tv. Put it in an audio file, and if it's good enough, it'll get played right in the podcast. Thank you for listening, and thanks again to Jacob Morris for joining me.
You're welcome, Shane.
Until next time, here's a quote from Julian Assange. People who argue that ISIS poses a threat to our democracies are out to lunch. ISIS is an ugly phenomenon, but it's largely the consequence of one blunder after another by the U.S. and its allies in the region, who shouldn't have been meddling there in the first place. If the U.S. and its allies want to reduce terror in the region, they need to stop participating in it. The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivative 3.0 Unported License. Bogosity. Do you want answers to creationist claims against evolution? Would you like to know more about evolution yourself, or even engage creationists more directly, with actual peer-reviewed sources to back you up? My book, How Evolution is Scientific, is designed to show the basics of evolutionary theory and how it is so well supported using the scientific method. It's impeccably sourced, with references to the actual scientific material, and is arranged using the creationists' own criteria of what is scientific. Using their own arguments against them, see how evolution is scientific, but creationism is not, based on observations, accurate predictions, logic, and evidence. Get answers to common creationist claims, and even a primer on abiogenesis, the start of all life. It's all in my book, How Evolution is Scientific, available at Amazon and on Kindle, EPUB, and PDF as well. Get How Evolution is Scientific and never be taken in by creationists again.
#YelpGate.